Steelers Nation, let me tell you something straight from the heart. Covering a player like TJ, what is something you do not take for granted? When you spend season after season watching a guy dominate the edge, wreck pockets, and tilt entire afternoons with one snap, you learn quickly that players like him do not come around often. And honestly, the idea that it is time to count him out feels way off the mark, because anyone who has truly followed this team knows what he brings every time he steps on that field. Now look, I'm not pretending he is having one of those trademark TJ campaigns where he puts the entire league on notice. We all know what the elite version of him looks like. We have seen him terrorize quarterbacks year after year. And sure, this season has not had that same electricity, that same weekly dose of chaos off the edge that felt automatic in past years. It is fair to say that he is not matching the monster numbers he has posted in seasons gone by. But here is the twist. When you dig into what he has actually done across these 11 games, the gap between this version of TJ and the one everyone keeps putting on a pedestal is not nearly as dramatic as the perception suggests. When you compare this year to last season, remembering that last season he played the full 17 games, and this time we have only had 11 so far, the production lines up more closely than most people would expect. He is sitting at 7 sacks across these 11 outings. Last year, across the entire schedule, he finished with 11.5. Stretch that pacing out, and he is actually trending a little higher. Tackles are in the same range. Tackles for loss are trailing, but not in some monumental way. Quarterback hits, forced fumbles, recoveries, even that lone interception overseas, it all paints a picture of a player performing closer to his baseline than the noise around him would lead you to believe. And here's the thing people forget. Evaluating a player who lines up where he does is not as simple as staring at box score numbers. You need to understand the chaos around him. This defense, as a whole, has not looked like its usual self. When the secondary is getting beaten over the top or the middle of the field keeps turning into free real estate for opposing offenses, the camera tends to drift to whoever arrives late to the pile, and sometimes that silhouette happens to be number 90. Fancy the play end, and they think, where was he? Why was he not blowing that up? But sometimes the truth is that the play was never designed to flow toward him in the first place. And then, of course, there is the rise of Nick Herbig, who is having a strong surge in his own right. When a young guy starts flashing and putting up splashy stats, people love to turn that into some kind of symbolic passing of the torch. But greatness does not disappear just because someone else has a hot month. Anyone who watched that play in the end zone in Chicago knows exactly who TJ Still is. That was vintage. He did not just sack Caleb Williams. He swallowed the entire play, locked up every angle, and separated the football without giving the quarterback a heartbeat to react. It was the kind of sequence that normally becomes the headline of the entire week. It showed force, awareness, technique, and timing, all rolled into one moment that only a handful of players in this league are capable of creating. What frustrates me is how quickly perception takes over when the surrounding unit is struggling. People start forming this narrative that TJ is fading, that he is slipping, that the contract is anchoring the team. But the reality is this: elite players cost money. That is the league. That is how it works. And this franchise has always believed in locking up its core pieces before they can even think about wearing a different uniform. Signing him did not stop the team from making other moves. It did not limit options. It did not block an offensive lineman or a wide receiver from walking through the doors. The front office still had room. The narrative that his deal crippled anything is simply not grounded in reality. And beyond that financial noise, there is something with TJ that numbers or cap lines could never capture. There's a drive in this guy that is rare. You see it when he plays, but you also see it when the cameras are not rolling. The hunger he carries is not about chasing individual awards, even though he has stacks of them. It is not about personal accolades or some flashy milestone. His eyes are fixed on one thing. He wants to win the Super Bowl. That is the one that matters to him. That is the one that keeps him pushing even when the season gets heavy, even when the defense is struggling, even when the outside noise gets loud. So when people start talking like they are ready to move on, like this is some steep decline, like the window has closed, it just feels disconnected from what is actually happening. Because if you look at the body of work, if you look at the effort, if you look at the film, if you look at the impact plays he still creates, there's no sign, not one, that this guy is anywhere near done. He is still the heartbeat of this defense, still one of the most relentless players in the league, still the type of presence opponents spend entire game plans trying to neutralize. And with a matchup coming up that is going to demand every ounce of defensive firepower the Steelers have left, this is exactly when a player like him reminds people why his name still sits among the best in football. This is when leaders rise. This is when the great ones reset the tone. When I watch him move, when I watch him fight through double teams, when I watch him rally this defense, even when things are breaking down around him, I do not see a player fading. I see a player still capable of changing games, still capable of putting quarterbacks on the ground, still capable of swinging momentum with one snap. When conversations shift from individual performances to the big picture, the topic that always circles back is the one hovering over this franchise like a shadow, the future of the head coach. It is impossible to ignore how loud that discussion has become. Every time this team stumbles, every time the offense sputters or the defense has breakdowns that leave everyone stunned, people start pointing fingers toward the head of the operation. The idea that the Steelers are stuck in mediocrity has become a talking point that floats around every corner of the fan base, and the coach sits at the center of that storm. But here's where things get complicated. This is not a situation you can paint in black and white. This is not simply a matter of whether players like him or whether players respond to him. Because when players speak publicly about their respect for him, that does not mean they are attaching their entire careers to his presence. When you hear a star say that the coach played a big part in them being here, that is true in a moment, but it does not automatically mean they're walking out the door if the organization ever makes a coaching change. These quotes often get pulled apart and overanalyzed until they lose their context entirely. Take TJ himself. When he spoke about how much the coach means to him, that was during a contract period when emotions were high and loyalty was front and center. It was genuine. It mattered. But it was not a declaration that his future is tied solely to one man. Cam Hayward said similar things. Veterans often speak in that tone because they appreciate stability, respect the culture, and understand the importance of leadership. But appreciation is not the same as dependency. The question people keep throwing out there, whether the locker room would fracture or whether there would be some kind of mass exit if the coach were to leave, just does not line up with what tends to happen in professional sports. Players want to win. Players want to compete. Players want a system that puts them in the best position to succeed. That is what drives them more than anything else. If a new voice steps in with strong ideas, clarity, competence, and direction, players adapt. They always adapt. Even the most established veterans can embrace change if they believe the leadership is putting the team on a path toward improvement. You do not need to look far for examples. All across sports, when coaching transitions happen, even after long tenures, you rarely see the roster implode. You see veterans take a deep breath, show up for work, and judge the new direction based on what it offers them. If the structure fits, if the message makes sense, if the results start showing up, they buy in. And buying can happen fast, sometimes faster than anyone expects. Players are not sitting around plotting dramatic exits. They are not basing their careers on who is standing on the sideline. They care about whether the scheme helps them shine, whether the preparation is sound, and whether the organization is positioning them to chase championships. Remove the emotion, and that is what it all boils down to. The tension around the Steelers right now comes from the widening gap between expectations and production. Fans remember the glory years. They remember the deep January runs and the nights when this team felt like a force. And when the team hovers too close to average for too long, people get restless. They want answers. They want someone held accountable. They want something to change. But the assumption that a coaching shift would break the locker room apart is not grounded in how players operate. What is happening inside the team right now is not about loyalty to one individual. It is about frustration with certain parts of the game plan, certain execution issues, certain inconsistencies that show up at the worst possible times. You can feel that tension every time this offense hesitates to throw the ball between the hashes. You can feel it every time the defense sinks back into a scheme that plays too soft or gets caught reacting instead of attacking. Those are the moments when players start wondering what they could be if the system opened things up instead of boxing them in. And to be clear, that does not mean the coach is the villain in every struggle. It means the players are human. They see what everyone else sees. They want to perform at their highest level. When something prevents that, frustration grows. And once that frustration builds, every decision, every breakdown, every misread becomes fuel for the debate surrounding leadership. But even in that kind of environment, players do not pack up and leave because the coach is gone. They evaluate systems, not personalities. They evaluate opportunities, not press conference quotes. Talent stays where winning feels possible, and it leaves where winning feels stagnant. That is why imagining some dramatic chain reaction, if the organization ever shifted direction, does not make sense. TJ is not walking out because someone new is running the meetings. Cam Hayward is not demanding a trade because the voice at the front of the room changes. Number 90 is driven by a desire to hoist the Lombardi Trophy. That is the fuel behind everything he does. He wants a championship. That is his North Star. And that goal outweighs anything happening above him on the coaching ladder. If you really want to understand how players respond to new leadership, watch how they act when a new system builds momentum. Suddenly, the veterans who once seemed hesitant become energized. The younger guys start playing faster. Practices look sharper. The energy shifts. The buy-in becomes natural. Because what players crave most is clarity and a path forward, not comfort and familiarity. And this team, even in the middle of its struggles, still has the talent pieces that could flourish with the right adjustments. That is what makes this moment so fascinating. There's a crossroads ahead, whether people want to admit it or not. The defense still has core anchors. The offense still has skilled players who are waiting for a structure that allows them to attack instead of tiptoe. And the fan base, as impatient as it is right now, is desperate for a spark that makes this team feel like a contender again. People talk about the legacy of the coach, how long he's been here, how rare stability is in the league. Those things matter, but what matters more is whether the team is maximizing its potential. And when you see defensive lapses that are uncharacteristic, when you see offensive restrictions that do not match the skill sets of the players, it becomes clear why these conversations keep surfacing. The athletes feel it too. They are competitive to their core. They want every rep, every quarter, every matchup to be an opportunity to show why they belong among the best. And when the structure does not allow them to do that, they voice their frustration through their play, through their body language, through the intensity they bring or do not bring to each snap. That is what makes this season so emotionally charged. There is a sense that something is holding this team back, but no one can fully agree on what that thing is. Is it the scheme, the leadership, the execution, the balance between old habits and new demands? You can feel the tug-of-war happening every week. And through all of it, TJ continues to be the anchor, the constant, the one who shows up with the same relentless drive whether the team is winning or fighting through chaos. That is why, no matter how heated the coaching debate gets, no matter how loud the outside world gets, no matter how many theories get thrown around, the idea that players would fall out over a transition just does not match reality. But before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to Steelers Nation Central and hit the like button on this video. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on the Pittsburgh Steelers. And don't forget to share your thoughts on the news in the comments below. Whispers began swirling across the league shortly after a brief but striking comment from Kansas City Chiefs head coach Andy Reid made its way into the media ecosystem. The veteran coach, not known for stirring unnecessary noise, surprised fans and insiders alike when he offered an unexpected praise to the Pittsburgh Steelers. The remark was simple, almost casual, yet it landed with the weight of a headline nobody saw coming. Within minutes, social networks, locker rooms, and talk shows lit up with speculation about what Reid truly meant. Sources close to the situation insist there was no hidden message, but that hasn't stopped the league from buzzing. Some believe Reid's words hinted at a deeper admiration for the Steelers' recent structural discipline. while others suggest he was subtly acknowledging a resurgence in Pittsburgh's identity. It didn't help that his tone, according to those present, carried an unusual warmth, something rarely seen when discussing potential AFC challengers. The reaction was immediate. Analysts dissected the phrasing, former players debated possible intentions, and fans rushed to interpret every syllable. Pittsburgh supporters embraced the moment as a sign that their team's evolving toughness was turning heads in high places. Meanwhile, Chiefs fans found themselves wrestling with mixed emotions, pride in their coach's sportsmanship, yet curiosity about why he chose this team at this moment to spotlight. Rival fan bases took the opportunity to spin theories of their own, adding fuel to the already growing chatter. Front office executives around the league, always alert to subtle shifts in public narrative, reportedly took note as well. While no one expects REID'S remark to alter competitive dynamics, the comment has undeniably added a new layer of intrigue to the AFC landscape. Whether it was a strategic compliment, a sincere nod, or simply a spontaneous moment from a seasoned coach, the ripple effect has been undeniable. In a league where every word is magnified, Andy Reid's unexpected praise has become the latest storyline to capture the NFL's imagination, one that may continue to linger far longer than anyone initially expected. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Pittsburgh Steelers, make sure to subscribe to Steelers Nation Central and give this video a like. We always look forward to hearing your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.